Guys, Mark, Kersten, I just met you, man. So,
we just met tonight, this very dance floor.
yeah, no, I appreciate you both joining. We were talking about doing a show, and
Oh yeah.
that was already in the books. We were going to do
Yeah.
that and talk. I know that a lot of you have heard the news of what happened with Evoto. I think it's fair, as I told you gentlemen, that we need to have a fair and balanced conversation about what's going on because, look, we're in the age of AI. This is not something new, and we can probably all agree that it was not handled the best way. I'm a free agent. I don't have any attachments to anything, right?
Right.
And sure, I applied for the Evoto Video AI because it makes sense, right, for my platform. It saves me time. Does it mean that I'm going to get it? I have no idea. But we should be able to talk about things without being so reactive.
I feel like for the uninitiated, we should lay out the situation as it presented itself to all of us last night and in the course of this morning.
Would you do the honors?
Yeah.
I think I'd have Mark explain the whole thing.
Well, I think I'm a non-biased. I'm a biased because, for full disclosure, I am the Evoto educator. So by contract, I am creating videos, educating, and part of that contract is to work with the developers. I talk to them about every 2 weeks. I talked to them about, an hour ago? Something
Not
like
even
that. I talked to the CEO today. I've been in contact with those guys since last night.
Right.
And so my perspective, I think, is radically different than yours. But I also know what actually happened, which is vastly different than what people are saying on Facebook and social media and YouTube. And so I'm very thankful to be here to be able to just say, hey, this is what actually happened,
Right.
because it's not reflective of what people are saying. So you say what happened.
Okay, so my understanding is
Yeah.
is that Evoto obviously is a company that creates AI tools for photographers to simplify the process of post-processing, skin retouching, and so on and so forth, which on the face of it is an extremely useful tool to speed up workflow and so on and so forth, right? From a business perspective, it's brilliant because, as you know, if you're a portrait or a headshot photographer, if you're behind the camera, you make money. If you're in front of the screen, you lose money, essentially, because you can't be shooting anything else.
Right.
So the more you can optimize the post-processing, post-production part of it, really, the better for you, essentially. And Evoto has made that, astonishingly easy at really high quality, and it's allowed. I mean, there are many tools some tools like that out there already by other companies, but one of the things that I've always found was Evoto has really ticked all the boxes for, as far as a professional headshot photographer is concerned. In my case, for instance,
Right.
you're not only single headshots, but also volume headshots, for example. Right, so lots of little features and tools that come in really handy. However, it appeared as though a AI tool randomly appeared, I believe, on the Evoto website. Is that true?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a AI headshot generator.
Yeah, so basically, all of a sudden there was, it seemed as though Evoto had released a AI headshot generator that allows you to essentially generate a professional headshot. Now the problem with that is that most headshot photographers will go, well, what's the point in me then?
Right.
Will this take all of our jobs? And I'll tell you one thing, I think this is poignant because, as you know, I run the Camera Shake podcast, and the first episode of every year is an episode where I send out an email to all of my former guests, and I simply say, what do you think is going to happen in 2026, right? What's your prognosis? What do you think is going to be happening to photography or in photography as far as the industry is concerned, maybe gear or whatever, in this coming year? Now, when I did this in 2025, pretty much every single responder talked about AI. But it was like, most responses displayed sort of a certain degree of fear. It was literally like, oh, well, AI is going to take our jobs, it's going to be difficult and blah, 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 and all the rest of it. Now, when I did the same thing in 2026, really every single response was still about AI, but this time the angle was different. This time, it wasn't about fear, it was about authenticity. It was about, acceptance that we live with AI. It's here to stay. It's not going to go away tomorrow. And so what do we do as photographers to differentiate ourselves from the competition, essentially? And the overall consensus was authenticity, truth, trust, creating trust with the client, and so on and so forth. It was a much more positive outlook than the year before. Now, here we are at the very beginning of January 2026, and this thing happens, and it feels a little bit like it's like somebody's poked the bear, because the responses I've experienced, and probably you have experienced this, through conversations on the expo floor all through today, was that it's really just taken the lid off again. And I think just as people have come to the conclusion that, maybe we can live with this thing, maybe this isn't going to kill our industry, maybe there is a light at the end of the tunnel, it just felt like, boom, somebody's just closed the other end of the tunnel again, and here we are back to where we were a year ago. And I think that's the fear that's just been released, so to say, right?
Right.
Okay, and with that, I think that outlines the situation.
Yeah, I mean, it was a slap in the face of some of the core customers of Evoto, because they're headshot photographers, and now they're seeing Evoto saying, we don't need you anymore. You can just take a snapshot, a selfie, upload it, and here you go. And so it caused a big uproar in several areas. One was, you've been using our photos this whole time to train your AI. That's one thing. That's not true. Absolutely not true. The second thing was, people saw their preferences. There's a little check mark that says, you want to share your information for us to improve the product. And they said, some people said, oh, Evoto's been stealing our information, which is not true. They said, hey, they've been working on this thing behind our backs for years to train up this new AI technology to replace our jobs. And the Evoto's response was, oops, we released something that was in beta and we shouldn't have done that. And nobody believed that explanation. They said, there's no way you could create a product like that and release it as an accident, which is partially true. And the response from Evoto was not well received. I think that's the best way to put that.
Right.
Yeah, so I can tell you what actually happened, which was, first of all, Evoto does not use your photos to train any AI. And the way Evoto works, when you're moving those sliders and you're doing all the blemish reduction, your photo doesn't go across the internet to the cloud to be, farmed. You know that because it happens instantly. There's no way a raw file can go across any network that fast. It's using algorithms. And so the AI people are talking about is really machine learning. So Evoto doesn't really do anything to your photo that you wouldn't manually do in Photoshop with frequency separation or a healing brush, those kinds of things. It's not doing generative fill. It's not doing as much AI as Photoshop offers you, if you choose, or the generative fill, I believe, that we have now in Lightroom Classic, those tools.
Right.
So the Adobe applications have far more AI capabilities, the traditional AI capabilities, than Evoto does, which is sort of counterintuitive because Evoto has AI in the name. So what happened was, there was an individual, so Evoto's headquarters is in Singapore. There is a marketing team, a sales team in the United States. The developers are in Singapore. And so they all happen to be here at Imaging USA. So all the US team was here. Almost all the developers were here. The people that write the software were here in Nashville. And they were at dinner last night, and somebody sent them a text and said, what is this? What is this? And they're like, what are you talking about? And they went to the Evoto webpage and went, whoa, what is that? So one of the first things is, there's no possible way these guys didn't know. But the truth is, almost everybody at Evoto had no clue that this was going on. So that is absolutely true. They did not know. And I know that because I was with them when they found out. The second thing is, the way this came into being was that there was an individual in Singapore who is upper management, who talked to one developer and said, we need a way to get more traffic to the Evoto website. There's got to be a way that we can get more eyeballs. So why don't we create a fun little tool that the average person can take a picture and make a professional headshot? And the developer said, that's going to take a long time. And they said, well, why don't we just license an existing product one that Adobe is using, so I can't say it because of an NDA. So they did. They used an API. They used an existing technology. They licensed it. They developed this little toy, basically, in about a week. Nobody knew about it except for the person that said we should do this and the developer that was working on it, and they launched it. And so the truth is, Evoto did not know that this was coming. There were 2 people, maybe 3 in the entire organization, and they made a colossal mistake.
So I have a question on that.
Sure.
So when you say Evoto, I believe all that, right? I
Yeah,
believe
ask
all
me
that.
hard questions.
In regards to Evoto,
Sure.
they say Evoto didn't know, but Evoto put a website. How does one reconcile the two? Because to us, I guess Evoto is Evoto because they put Evoto on
Sure.
the top. So how do we reconcile that?
Well, in any organization, you have not, like the entire organization doesn't know everything
Got it.
all
So like
the time.
Evoto, these guys, the developers and the people that were here didn't have no clue.
They didn't know. So I mean, any large organization has different teams. The dev
course.
team, American dev team, the
Yeah.
software, the quality assurance, all of that stuff.
Right.
And so most of those guys, all of them that I work with, none of them knew that this was happening. And they were very, very surprised and almost to tears upset.
Oh, I believe it,
actually.
man. That was
Yeah.
not fair.
It was really, really bad. I can't understate how upset they were about it. And not just because they were caught off guard, but because they had spent years building trust,
Right.
and in a heartbeat it was broken. And probably for a lot of people it will never ever, when you hit a dog, that dog's never going to trust you again. Once you break trust,
Right.
it never can come back. And what's worse than breaking the trust with your customers is if somebody does something with good or bad intentions. I think these were good intentions. And, the bad thing is they should never have done this without asking their core, customers, or asking the
Right.
developers, asking their sales team. Like, they messed up.
Right.
And they messed up in a colossal way.
At the worst time, too.
At the worst
Yeah.
time. Their response was horrible. They, I don't want to cuss on your podcast, but they really messed up.
Yeah.
Nobody's denying that. And unfortunately, it was 2 people who did that. And potentially thousands of people are going to pay a price for that. Every person that's an ambassador for Evoto is now called into question. Every customer of Evoto is now doubting if their data is being used with integrity.
Right.
Trust has been broken, and even with me explaining it to you and your listeners, and Sal sat down with Jay Peterson, who's the U.S. sales director. So Sal did a video tonight with one of the top executives at Evoto. So that's coming out. Evoto's making a statement. There's like a lot of information that's coming out about, hey, here's how we screwed up.
Yeah.
There are going to be thousands of people that were never, ever going to believe that. And unfortunately for them, they're going to give up one of the best retouching tools on the planet. And so that'll affect their market, that'll affect their ROI. It's going to be, so none of this is good. But to anybody listening, let me dispel. Did they know what was happening? No, they didn't know what was happening except for the 2 or maybe 3 people that made the mistake. Do they farm your photos? Absolutely not. In fact, the technology doesn't do any modeling. There's no generative anything. They don't do that. Do they take your information? No. If you opt in to share your information, you're sharing your name, your email address. I think it's your phone number and maybe your geography. I'm in the US, I'm in Arizona, whatever. The other thing is these guys are just going to shut this down, change its name, and release it somewhere else. But they can't, because it's not their technology. They used an API for a non-developer. That means somebody else makes some software and it has a socket that you can plug into and use it for yourself. So that's what they did. So they can't rebrand it and reuse it and give it to somebody else because it's not theirs. It's not their technology. They don't have copyrights. Right. It's impossible for them to do that. And so
I feel that one of the biggest issues right now, and I would love to get your perspective on this too. I understand all of that, right? I can understand how one colossal minor decision can lead down this snowball of chaos, right?
Well, I
Is that-
wouldn't say it was one minor decision. I think they have to evaluate how this happened. So there's a reason that they didn't communicate. What's that reason? Why weren't they talking to the US sales team? Why weren't they talking to the entire development team? Why didn't they do some beta tests? Why didn't they ask their end users? So they haven't addressed those issues, and they absolutely have to, especially if they're going to have transparency and trust with anybody that uses Evoto ever again.
Yeah.
So I don't want to minimize and say, it was not a big deal. It was a huge deal, a huge mistake. And there are a lot of things that they have to address, and I think they will address. So, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. That's great. The community is what I want to talk about.
Sure.
Because of the fact that I went through every group, WPPI, Shutterfest, Headshot
Right.
Tools, all of them. They're just going at it. People are being so reactive, like they are with everything in this world. So it's
Right.
nothing new. It's like fill in the blank outrage. The API concept, it makes sense now to me how they were able to do this, which means they were never the first ones to design this. We seen this 2 years ago where you can upload a bunch of pictures and you get a headshot. This is nothing new.
You can get an app for like $2 that creates.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
that's it.
And the point of creating a tool that the average user can use, that maybe they cannot afford a headshot by me or you or Gary Hughes, whoever else, right? Maybe they will love to, but they can't. And I got this from my wife. She's the one that told me this, is what if somebody just can't afford it? They only have $10 and this
Right.
gives them the opportunity to maybe get a job that they're looking to get. There's nothing wrong with that. And a good friend of mine, Carl, he mentioned, guys, how is this any different than us firing our editors because we're using AI? We removed that industry practically. Now there's a tool that exists, that has existed, that is doing that for a different market. We should focus, guys, on the experience that we give our customers and
Yeah,
less than a photo. Because if
Right.
we're focusing on photo, you're not providing the difference between a computer and a human.
Well, I think there is a difference, though. So if you're a headshot photographer, you bring a certain craft, your lighting, your style, bringing out the energy of a person, getting them to smile, and you're looking into a soul of a person.
Amen.
AI does not do that. But having said that, if you go into Adobe Express or Adobe Photoshop or any number of tools and you upload a selfie and you type a prompt and you say, convert this to a professional headshot, make me in a business suit, make sure I have an office, it will generate for you an AI generated headshot. So not the only thing, what they were trying to do is say, let's make this a fun little thing that people can go do a selfie, get a cool headshot. I don't know if they meant it to be serious or as a gag. I can't speak for them.
Right.
But this technology has been around for at least 2 years, probably
However-
more. They just made it easy.
Yeah, I think the problem with that is, and it's highly a trust issue. I mean, imagine if you find out that your wife has a lover. Okay, that's bad enough.
I don't have a wife. This is shocking.
I know, but just imagine.
Right.
You find out your wife's cheating on you, and that's terrible, right? Terrible. But if she's cheating with your best friend, it just makes it a hell of a lot worse. And I think that is the problem right now. Is that I think we know that these technologies have been around for a while. I think everybody knows that you can download like a $2 app from the App Store or whatever. It's a little bit like you stick it because it's Evoto. It feels like somebody stuck the dagger in and twisted it around a few times. So
I agree.
So I think that's the problem. But if we just bring this back to a professional, if we just keep this podcast professional for a minute, gentlemen.
Keep it professional.
The thing. Okay, so if we look at this from a professional perspective, and this is a conversation I had with people 2.5 years ago when AI first appeared, right? Because same thing. Oh my God, we're all going to lose our jobs. They're not diminishing anything, but that was literally the fear. The fact of the matter is this. If you just look at headshot photography, for example, you just need to look around a little bit and you find there are really expensive headshot photographers, like a Peter Hurley headshot or a Gary Hughes headshot. I believe they're probably not inexpensive. They're probably really quite expensive. Then there are, there's your regular headshot photographer in your town and they might charge, a few bob, as they say. There's a medium range. Then you've got, of course, the low end, high volume kind of, because this is how business works, right? It's either it's high value or high price low volume or low price, high volume. This is that's basically how it works. So if your business is threatened by this Evoto occurrence, then your business had a problem before. Because the reality is, if you're aiming at that low end of the headshot market, you had a problem long before today. Because it is true that those technologies will, transform that low end thing. So the client that doesn't want to spend any money and still wants a headshot, well, they're eventually going to download an app and going to do it themselves on their snappy.
Sure. I think that you make a good point. And the challenge is there are, you're in London, I'm in Phoenix, I live in large cities. I don't know if most, but a lot of photographers live in Andover, Kansas, Missoula, Montana, small towns.
It's a great place, apparently.
It's awesome. Missoula's great. Hamilton's better. But these, when you're in a very, very, a town of 10,000 people as opposed to a town of 6 million people, you have limited number of people you can do headshots for.
Right.
And so the difference between a person that's in a smaller venue versus a larger venue is they really have to protect that market. And so the threat of AI ruining their business is much higher than a photographer in Manhattan.
Yeah, if you've got access to 5 million people around you, it's much easier to fill that spot.
You got a much higher demand.
Yeah.
And so when, that I think that's one of the large problems with what Evoto did, is they said to their core audience, their core user base, we don't care about you. That was the perception. We're going to replace you with an easy to use tool. And that's in direct contradiction to what they've been doing, which is we're going to give you the tools to compete in a small market where a person wants a promotion at, from a Starbucks to a Starbucks manager or something, and they're not going to have hundreds of dollars to spend.
Right.
And so they could come to me and say, can you do this for $50 or 25, whatever it is. And I can do that because I can spend 7 cents on the retouching. And so to take that away and say, now we're going to give the opportunity for anybody that needs a great headshot to just click and be done, you could kill their business. And so that was a huge misstep. I think they've understood that. Should have never happened. And now I think Evoto is going to continue to do what it's always been doing, which is to deliver a tool that helps photographers, headshot photographers, pet photographers now, senior portrait photographers, family, any kind of portrait photography. They're going to give them the tools to do that job faster, quicker, better, and with the tools that make people look like a better version of themselves, not a plastic Barbie doll version of themselves, which is what they do so well. But they got to get over this trust issue.
Well, and so I think the real problem is not actually the tool. I think this is the misunderstanding in this whole debate, is that on surface level, people are upset about the tool, right? The problem is not the tool. The problem is an organizational one, because in any organization, in any large organization, you have to have safeguards. You have to have levels of approval, before something like this goes live. I mean, a good example would be the car industry, right? I know over the last few years, all these scandals that have come out with Volkswagen and other German manufacturers, who basically misled their customers and the public about emission and stuff like that, Right. So, you would think that there are several layers of protection built into an organization. You wouldn't, I just did this actually, but you wouldn't just, finish editing your photos and immediately send them to a client. You would put a safeguard in there, whether you give yourself a couple of hours, and then you look at them again just to check that they're all right or whatever, right? I mean, we all do that on a small scale. And with a company like Evoto, the expectation is just, and this is part what makes that trust or creates that trust, is that these protection layers are in place. And it seems, it's very astonishing, almost incredulous, that this could actually just even happen in the first place, that there wasn't some, Well,
I can tell you right now, from 20 years, I've been doing corporate for God knows how long, man. Longer than probably I've been in the actual photo industry, I would say. And You're right. And organizations are going to have their checks and balances. Not always will they have the QA, right? Sometimes they'll build the QA after they screwed up, right? So I'm sure that from this, they're going to learn a lesson there. And it's obvious that the Singapore office or whatever it might be, there was a game plan at some point to see what this would do. That's fine. That could be their directive. Granted, not handled the best. We can all agree to that.
Handled horribly.
And yeah, and the first response felt like an insult to our intelligence. They put something afterwards that I respect, which is they bolded when they said, we're not using your images. You don't put that in writing, in bold, unless you're sure you're not going to be able to get sued. So a lot of people, to your point, have been putting a lot of false information. I truly believe what you put in writing in this country is been vetted by a legal team, most likely, and the outrage over this and how much third-party information people are getting and making decisions off of it, I can guarantee you 90% of the people that are outraged right now are going to continue to use Evoto because they built their system and they built their livelihood on this tool. It has allowed so many people to make money, to make a better livelihood, maybe have a better life with their family because of this tool. And like with so many things in this damn country and in the world, they're outraged, they're poking at this thing. This is not something that's new. We've seen the headshot thing in the past, and the fact that it's an API is no different than ChatGPT. You can build the tool, connect the socket to your point, and now you have the same capabilities in your own tool. Doesn't mean you built it, you just kind of borrowed that technology.
I think the issue is those people that are using the tool and love the tool feel betrayed and don't know what the roadmap is going forward. They're like, are these guys actually building tools that are going to give people ways to kill our own business? And I think it's a trust issue. The cool thing, part of my contract with them as an Evoto educator, Evoducator? Yeah.
Evoducator.
I get to see the roadmap. So I know what's on the roadmap for the next year or so. And none of the rumors, none of the crazy stuff, none of that stuff is on that roadmap. And I've seen what they've done in the past 2 years. Right. And I did see on some Facebook posts that, oh yeah, if you look at this, they've been planning this since 2024, and if you look at this page, and I'm like, it's just, that's all bullcrap. None of that is true. Also, I know the people that are writing the software. I know Otis, and I know, you met these guys. We went back into the break room, and they were all sitting there. We get to sit down and chat with the developers. They were devastated, and I challenge anybody that's ever worked at a Fortune 500 company to tell me they haven't had a manager, usually not a first level manager, but like somebody in between, who decided to do some stupid thing, went ahead and did it, and then everybody under was like, what the heck? Why is this guy or girl doing this idiotic thing? The only difference is this one was publicly facing and everybody saw it. Yeah. But think about your job. Name a manager, name a person, a coworker. Everybody has.
I made mistakes. I've made some mistakes that have been like,
This was a huge mistake.
Trust me, this is the kind of mistake that will get you fired in corporate. You know what I mean?
Right. This is a Tylenol level kind of apology that's needed. Yeah. I'm probably too old. Nobody knows what that means.
So
do you know what I'm talking about?
Are you talking about which one? There's a pregnancy one, but
no. Yeah, some murderer injected Tylenol.
Oh Jesus, I didn't know that one.
Like in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Somebody somewhere, they never figured it out. They injected poison in headache medicine, and a bunch of people died.
That'd be a great episode on that one, but
and look many documentaries. And so Tylenol, nobody trusted Tylenol because if you take it you could die. And so their response to that was epic, and it saved their business. They basically recalled everything, even though they knew that it was safe to take. They brought it all back. Anyway, Google that. It's a fascinating story. But when we were talking this morning about what kind of response is needed, I'm like, you guys need a Tylenol level response. Something massive, something totally transparent, where people know that what you're telling them is the truth, and they can believe in your product again.
So the question really is what is the long-term solution?
Well, one of the challenges is AI is not going anywhere. Somebody else is going to do the headshot thing, AI is going to continue to grow. Generative fill is going to continue to grow. Adobe's been incorporating AI into their products for years. They've just been making it the genius move by not calling it AI. They're adaptive masking and things like that. It's AI. This stuff is not going anywhere. If you rewind in history, you had, when film was in its early stages, you had like Ansel Adams and the F64 group that said you got to have, your aperture literally at f64. Everything from the foreground to infinity has to be in focus. You have to tell the story as it is, no modifications except for in the darkroom. And then you had guys like Man Ray and Picasso and the surrealists were like, no, we can go in the darkroom and bend the paper and add masks, and we can, put violin shapes on the back of nude women, and we can do all this creative stuff and make images that don't exist in reality. And there was a massive fight. And it's interesting to me that fight was repeated in the early 2000s when it was, we got to go from film where you have to get it right in camera to these digital cameras where magically you could create stuff that wasn't real, saturation and all that kind of stuff. Massive fight. And then there was the RAW versus the JPEG thing. And then there was, it was about every 50 years the same argument happens over and over. We just happen to be in one that's got some ethical and moral implications that we haven't seen before. Not only is AI have the potential for taking jobs, it has an environmental impact, it has impacts on, power generation, the price of storage,
I don't think
chips.
you're right. That's actually
a lot.
It's a fundamental difference because when Polaroid first invented the instant camera, basically, this was yet another situation when half the world of photographers cried that photography was dead yet again, and but that was really just something that affected the photography world,
right.
Because nobody else really cares about instant cameras. Yeah. But AI is different because AI really affects every single part of our lives. It's not just photography; it's everything else.
But I remember in the early 2000s, there was PPA, Professional Photographers of America, and they had the ASMP. Now ASMP has changed since then, but in the early days, I was a member of ASMP, and I would go to the chapters in Arizona and even the national stuff that they were doing, and they were railing against microstock. They were railing against new price models. They're like, you can't use digital photography. You can't do this stuff because it's driving prices so low. Anybody can afford a $1,500 camera. It's going to put all of the photographers who've studied for years with darkrooms out of business. And so they said no, and ASMP essentially died because they didn't change with the marketplace and the technology that's in place. And on my videos, I see sort of there's a stratification of the viewers and their experience level, I put it that way.
Yeah.
And the newer photographers are very excited about things like the Nano Banana stuff, all the generative fill, Adobe Express, Evoto for sure, and even other products like Apergy and Luminar Neo, those kinds of things. They're really excited, they're embracing it, they're using it, they're evolving, and they're competing in ways that people that are rejecting AI can't compete. And those with more experience, a little bit older generation are saying, no, don't do that. Instead, they should be saying, let's become educated, let's learn what's appropriate, let's serve on boards, let's try to build in some ethical guidelines, let's try to work with these data centers, let's try to limit, there's a bunch of things that we could do that could make AI morally sustainable and ethically acceptable, but that's a lot of work. And so instead of causing a flame war on a Facebook group, maybe settle down a little bit, ask some questions about specifically how did Evoto do this? Let's get to the heart of that. And then how do we handle this going forward in a way that's a constructive way, because it is not going away.
I think you mentioned earlier, right, that they're going to have to do a tunnel level, campaign tour, whatever it might be, full disclosure, because trust has been broken. You take the point of, having a lover that's your best friend even makes it worse. And I feel that if they allow themselves to be like, look, here's the truth. Here it is, right in front of it. This is all that we can give you. There's only they're not going to give you IP stuff. I mean, come on, they're not going to do that. We can't expect anything like that. But if they come out of it like they've been so far, the people that have built their business strategically, this is not going to break them. They're going to continue to use the tool, and perhaps trust will be built more down the road.
I think so. But I think there are people that are never going to believe, because the explanation is pretty simple, and it's so simple. People are like, no, that can't be it.
There's too much false information, and that's the problem with all
Right.
these groups. The second, third perspective that completely has muddied the water, and that's a bigger problem in society today, and
Wow.
it's clearly affecting Evoto right now, because the answer could be as simple as middle management and somebody else in a different part, from a different segment, from a different company. JP Morgan Chase, PwC, Bank of America, they all have segmented groups, they all have different legal entities.
Sure.
They all fall within the same Bank of America world, right? So Evoto it's the same way, right?
Yeah,
US,
Evoto's not that big. There was a couple guys that said, hey, I think this would be cool. Let's
Yeah.
create this little thing in a sandbox. Let's throw it up on the site. Let's bring more eyeballs. And they didn't tell anybody about it. And it had a potential of bringing down a huge customer base.
yeah,
But
and
that's the explanation.
yeah,
It's like
I
a
feel
couple guys screwed up.
I definitely feel you're right. I think that a title level type of, be open with the community, because they've been great, man. Like, that's the thing. Like, a lot of people have benefited significantly from not only them but from other companies as well that do very similar, and that cannot be overridden too, because it allows us to do something like I'm able to do volume headshots, volume events, because of tools like that. My time
Right.
is limited. Time is a limited resource, and for me to be able to build a system that I built is utilizing the tools, regardless of there might be some sacrifices I'm making to leverage this comfort and this convenience. If they leave, they leave, right? If you
Right.
build the trust, perhaps it's like if you present yourself honestly, and people respect that, you're going to get people that are going to believe in you again and spend in you
Right.
again. It may hurt for a little bit. What I really, it irks me, man. It irks me. It's the people on Facebook, on Twitter, just talking about things without first getting the facts. Something as simple as like, hey, before you blow up, how about you ask the right questions and try to understand? But unfortunately, in a matter of hours, it had just been so many different versions of
Yeah, I
it.
mean, it's a ask first, shoot later, or
Yeah.
whatever the
Or
thing
shoot
is.
first,
ask
yeah,
later.
shoot first, ask
You're
questions.
definitely
That's
not an
really-
American.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, there you go. That's
No, but
it.
I tell you what, Mark, man, I really, and first, Kersten, I want to thank you, and because I don't know how it happened, but you decided to bring Mark along, and
Well, if there's anybody, there's nobody better qualified than Mark to actually answer that question. Secondly, talk about it, and I thought it was, rather than us just discussing this situation, I think it was important to bring some clarity to it, because there is so much misinformation out there.
Right.
And it's this thing like there's always a pool of people who are going to be the "I told you so," group of people who are going to be like, "Oh, well, see, the whole I told you so." I said it from the beginning. It's that's what it is. And unfortunately, a lot of that just, it's nonsense.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll say this. I think we're coming to the end of this discussion, but I know the people that write this software personally. I talk to them every week. I talk to them multiple times a week. I know the people that manage the company. I know the people that are doing the marketing and the sales.
Right.
They have integrity. They were highly upset about what happened. They were shocked about what happened. They're working as hard as they can to correct the issue, and they want to be as transparent as possible to make sure that people can trust them and to make sure it never happens again. And so, for those of you who know who I am, I've been doing this. My YouTube channel just hit 19 years
Wow,
old.
that's good.
I think I have a track record to say I'm a trustworthy source, and I'm willing to put my name and my reputation on the line to say these guys messed up. It was a few people, 2 or 3 people, that did something that the rest of the organization didn't know about, and they're not going to do it again.
A good lesson, and for everybody, Evoto photographers, take this as constructive feedback. Take it as honest feedback from 3 different perspectives, right? 3 different perspectives here. We're all professionals in this field, and Kersten, man, you've been on my show before, and I've been on your show. Your podcast is great. I just feel that we need to have more conversations before you jump on a reaction campaign. Talk
Right.
to people, understand what's going on, because the first thing I thought of was like, wow, this is going to be so difficult for the people at the Evoto booth. They have nothing to do with this. They're like just there. They're like the line soldiers.
Well, you know what's crazy about that? So I did presentations today. I was at Tether Tools. I was doing demos. I talked to Ian and 2 or 3 other people who are doing demonstrations at different locations today, all using Evoto. Nobody said anything.
No.
Nobody in the audience said anything. And even at the booth online, people are like, we're going to storm the gates. We're going to go. We're going to give them what for. We're going to like throw bricks and tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. And I think they had a conversation with maybe 4 people who were asking questions, and they sat down with them. They explained what happened, and those people went away satisfied. And other than that, it was a normal day at Imaging USA.
Yeah, and you know, this is an interesting thing actually, because this is the echo chamber problem.
Yeah.
You know, so there were 2 echo chambers today. This is interesting actually, because I remember when this first. Well, I woke up to this news basically this morning, and I remember Mark and I.
It was me sending you like, hey, do you know?
And we went for breakfast, right? And we were talking about it, and thinking, oh man, this could potentially blow up and be really explosive and blah blah. And I remember I said to you, nah, I don't think. It's
Nobody's
Facebook,
gonna know.
Nobody's gonna know. You don't worry about it. We walked out of the Starbucks, and on the way out,
3 steps.
3 steps, and we met like 4 different people, and every single person went, "Oh my God, have you heard the Evoto thing?" And so immediately you think like, "Oh man, this happened at precisely the worst possible moment, like in the middle of Imaging USA, right?" But here's the thing: we know that these sort of things always get blown out of proportion when they, when something goes like semi-viral on some kind of social media platform like Facebook in this case, right? It's because it creates its own echo chamber. Somebody says something, somebody else chimes in, and before you know it, it's a snowball, rolling down the hill, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more uncontrollable. Well, that's echo chamber number 1. Echo chamber number 2 is actually this, Imaging USA, where, you have probably thousands of photographers all bunched up together, and, one goes, "Oh man, you're just thinking about the voting, but oh my God, that's terrible. What is that? What happened? Oh my, this happened, blah, 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 blah." And,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Before you know it, it's like
Wallace
everybody in
and
the
Gromit.
building goes like, "Oh my God, oh my God."
Yeah.
But actually the reality is once you look outside of Facebook and outside of Imaging USA, nobody cares.
Well, I think the opposite happened here today, which was people were talking about it. They talked to Evoto. They realized what actually happened, and then they started like, oh, okay.
That's because they had the conversation.
Yes,
They had the
what I mean?
conversation.
Exactly
They had
right.
the conversation.
And so, exactly, and so more to my point, just to finish that off, it's, I think that although originally there was a potential danger that it would turn into an echo chamber here at Imaging,
Right.
the reality is actually that rather it being the worst possible moment, maybe it was actually the best possible moment, because exactly people could actually speak directly to Evoto and
Right.
get answers directly from the horse's mouth.
The
Yeah.
horse's mouth. By the way, if you want to save up to 20% on Evoto, use my discount code, Evoto Mark Wallace.
I like
There you
that. You know what? I'm actually going to leave it right there. You gentlemen, we're going to have another conversation down the road where I really want to talk to you because,
Absolutely.
ironically enough, I know this much about you, Mark, but I do know you're very respected.
I knew he didn't know who I was.
I knew very little. There's so many talented people in this world, but I do know that you're a respected leader here, and I respect that. You know what I mean?
Let's
And
chat, man. Let's do it.
We'll do it, and we'll talk art outside of once this whole thing blows over. But Kersten, man, I really appreciate you. This is like a dual episode. I love always talking to you, and
He's the best guy. Isn't
Yeah, he's a
he?
great guy.
He
He's a
saved
great
me
guy.
during COVID. He was one of my COVID Zoom buddies.
yes,
So-
exactly.
his podcast, Camera Shake Podcast, definitely check it out. We're both on each other's show. He's just a great human overall.
Thank you,
Mark,
man.
just you coming here, doing this, talking to me in a moment that
In a
the worst
moment.
possible moment.
In the world.
Yeah, in the world. No, I really appreciate.
Thank you for having me. It's this has been a perfect scenario because people need to know. They
Yeah.
need to know what happened. We need to make sure that everyone understands that Evoto doesn't think this was a nothing thing. It was a significant thing. They messed up. They're ready to make it right. And let's move forward.
Agreed. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. It's been wonderful. And sucks that I won't see you for like another year, likely. But
Oh my God.
No.
it didn't feel like a year, though.
No, not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
All right, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the
This is-
meantime, if you want to check out the Camera Shake podcast, where we talk to some of the best photographers in the world about how they do what they do. Anyway.
Or just Google Mark Wallace Photography. You can see thousands of videos on YouTube, Creative Live, on f-stoppers around the world.
And this has been the Outspoken Artist podcast at Imaging USA 2026. We love these microphones. They're so great.
They're so fun. We can do all kinds. Yeah.
All right,
Thanks
guys.
so much.
Thank you, man. Bye.